Don, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. You have some exciting news that's just kind of happened in the last month or so, if you would like to share with everybody.
So I was fortunate enough to publish a book a few weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, sometime, called Leadership Practices for Healthy Lands, um, building the capacity to sustain our capacity to protect, to sustain our valuable lands and waters, something like that. Anyways, it's a series of practices meant for conservationists and land managers, rooted in, we got to get out of this somehow. What we're doing right now, the education, regulation, protection is, we're still declining at unprecedented rates here. And the value of our natural resources twice that of the global gross domestic product. So it seems we need to come up with something new. And I thought we need to augment with some people skills, some leadership skills, so that people can actually implement and know who to talk to start with. And once they talk in a way that people respond, and the people that can really sustain the world, the stakeholders, the ones that are using the world, the ones that are fishing, the farming, and so forth, logging, those are the ones we need to reach. And that takes a different set of skills than just being a scientist or a policymaker.
And the book is, even though it's aimed at those people who are stewards of the lands and the waters, because I've read the book, it's not just for those people. I mean, this is a book that is about, it's like a primer. It's a distillation of leadership practices that would be good for anyone.
Yeah, including the book actually starts after it makes a case for leadership. It actually starts with preparing yourself before you venture forth and try to tell somebody else how to do something. So it builds in that humility and identification of purpose and mission and so forth right up front, so you get off to a good start.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And for those of you that don't know Don, he's dedicated his life to protecting our planet. And I mean, he started out as a scientist, right?
Yes, I was a research scientist from the beginning, yeah. Then you
And
realize the limits of just conducting research, and like people don't say, oh, did you conduct research? Oh, let's make a law. Let's enforce something. Doesn't work that way. So,
and some of your early work was helping the folks at Disney in Florida make sure that they weren't destroying valuable homes of wildlife. Isn't that correct?
yeah, we actually, I was working for Disney Worldwide, but and it had me focused a lot on Florida because they wanted to build a conservation park. So they needed somebody who could give them some credibility and really go forward properly. And so that included some of the design features for the park, but it also included a natural resource management plan for the whole property that protected 60 species and a number of critical habitats. So that, Everglades, China, I've been all over the place. But yeah, I've been blessed to be given some opportunities to have some fun. So
And
thank
now
you.
you're in private practice advising other conservationist organizations, right?
Yes, I am focused right now on spreading knowledge as much as possible. So, blogging, advising, writing books, um, helping people with strategy, and helping people with leadership to implement strategy. So that's
So
where I figured I could have the biggest bang.
that book is called Leadership Practices for Healthy Lands, and it's available at all the booksellers. And it's Dr. Don Kent. Well, thank you everybody for being here. And I've really been looking forward to this because of my dear friend Jeri that's joining us. Some of you are new to Happy Hour for Hope. And so I want to give you kind of an overview of how this goes. It is a free event, and we encourage you to make a contribution to our charitable partner, who I will tell you about in a moment. And the way that you do that is you go to the Happy Hour for Hope website, which is happyhourhope.com, happyhourhope.com. And there on the website, you can go there anytime to get information about who the upcoming guests are going to be. So you can direct friends and family to this site so they can learn more about Happy Hour for Hope. And you can then, as you scroll down the website, you'll see these little buttons, and you can see you can buy a soft drink for $5, beer or wine for $10, all the way up to a top shelf champagne for $100. And of course, those aren't real drinks. One day we will all get together and have real drinks, but for now, this is how you make your contribution. So 100% of our contributions, of your contributions, go to the charity. This is not a moneymaker for anyone. And we kind of have these charitable partners in some categories. We've given money to organizations that are focused on providing COVID relief, racial and social justice, climate change, and just plain people needing support. And here's a list of the organizations that we've given to so far. We've given over $6,000. And thanks to many of you who are here with us tonight, thank you so much for the difference that you've made in the lives of the people who you have touched in these different organizations. Thank you so much. And tonight's charitable partner is brought to us by Jeri, our guest, and it is the Imani Pearls Community Development Foundation. And Jeri, could you just tell us a little bit about this organization?
So Imani Pearls, which Andrew showed, so that is the charitable arm of my sorority and the chapter of my sorority that I belong to. So I belong to Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, which is actually the first African-American sorority that was founded in 1908 on the campus of Howard University. And actually our vice president, she is a member of that sorority, my mom, and it's a big deal to me. And so my chapter's charitable arm is the Imani Pearls Community Development Foundation, and it's all about scholarships. So the organization is about sisterhood, scholarships, and service. And so the scholarships that we fundraise for are for high school students who are in certain zip codes in Chicago, in areas that are, I'll say, underserved. And so we try to help them get to college. And so that is my charity of choice. Yeah.
So that's our charitable partner tonight. And I encourage you to go to happyhourhope.com and share if you can. No obligation, but we would appreciate it. So I want to kind of give the official intro of Jeri. I'm so excited that she's here. Jeri's, well, she's the founder of and the host of HushLoudly, which we'll be talking about. It's a podcast on WGN Radio, on WGNradio.com. And so the program is basically dedicated to amplifying the voice of introverts. And Jeri is actually a marketing communications professional and a consultant with more than 20 years experience working in higher education, nonprofit, association management and membership, and also in the advertising field. She earned her bachelor's degree in public relations and a master's degree in integrated marketing communications from Roosevelt University. And she's currently pursuing a doctorate in education, focusing on higher education leadership from National Louis University. And she expects to be completing this spring, right?
I'm hoping. Yeah, springish, summerish.
And what's cool is her dissertation topic centers around introverted leadership and how the introverted personality type informs and influences and leads. So I just think that's so cool. And Jeri and I met, gosh, around, I think, 2016. And I was brought in to do a project at an organization where she was working, and she was, I think your title was Vice President of Marketing and Communications.
Yes.
She's basically the Chief Marketing Officer for this organization. And I was at the organization a lot over a 3-year period. And I just always looked forward to seeing Jeri because she is such a kind, warm, authentic person. And I got to know her and to really appreciate her wisdom and actually the gifts of her, ironically, of her being an introvert. And so I think we'll probably talk about that a little bit. So I'm just so glad you're here, Jeri. So let's talk about the world of the introvert and your world, Jeri. I thought maybe just take a minute because I don't want to take for granted that everybody knows what introversion and extroversion is. It's, those concepts are pretty ubiquitous. And I think a lot of people learn about introversion and extroversion when they take the Myers-Briggs type indicator at
Yeah.
work most of the time. Probably a lot of you or all of you have been exposed to Myers-Briggs. But just so we are at the same place as we start this conversation, I just thought I'd take a minute to just talk about introversion and extroversion. The work around introversion and extroversion actually came from Carl Jung and his work in psychotherapy, and the way that he defined introverts, and it's not binary, like you're not either introverted or extroverted. It's more of a continuum. And so these tend to be preferences. So those of us who have introverted tendencies tend to charge our batteries. We recharge by spending time alone. And they lose energy being around people for long periods of time, particularly large crowds. And I think one of the things that's always been useful for me to understand is that introverts like to think before they speak. And extroverts, on the other hand, they gain energy from other people. So extroverts actually find their energy is sapped when they spend too much time alone, and they recharge by being social. And here, extroverts tend to speak in order to think, as opposed to the introvert that needs to think before they speak. And so there is kind of a spectrum. And I just wanted to show you this because, like I said, it's not binary. It's more of a spectrum, and, kind of in the middle is what they refer to as ambiversion. And none of us are at the extremes. It's just what our preferences are when it comes to where you get your energy, right? One of the things that I've realized is that the introversion extroversion thing is, it's like if you're right-handed, writing with your right hand doesn't render your left hand inert or useless. And similarly, an extroverted person can still do things that are considered more introverted, like taking time to reflect in silence. And meanwhile, introverts can learn to adapt to more extroverted scenarios, even if it might not come as naturally. So I just wanted to say those few things about introversion and extroversion, just to kind of ground us as we move into the conversation. And so, Jeri, how did you, I want to talk a little bit about you first and your experience of the world of introversion, extroversion. How did you experience introversion before you were aware of that as a concept?
I always knew I was different, and I just thought I was just nerdy, and I like to read, and I'd be on my porch. I'm an only child, and I grew up entertaining myself, and there were kids on my block, but I'd be on my porch reading, or I'd have my Barbie dolls, and was very comfortable and very happy that way. And as a teen, I was the most responsible teen, which is interesting. I didn't have a curfew. I was able to drive my mom's car. And so all the kids wanted to ride with me, and we'd go to parties. And I'd go, but I didn't really, I wasn't into it like they were. And so I knew I was different. And then same thing in college. I love football. So I would be going to the football games to watch the game. And, my friends would be going to get guys. Now I like guys too, but we were just going for different reasons. And so it wasn't until my 20s, at a position that I held where I had the Myers-Briggs. And that's when I was told that I was an INFP. And so as Stanley wrote, he's an ENFP. So we're kind of similar. And so the I is for introversion, the N is for intuitive, the P is for feeling, and the P is for perceptive. And so when you take a Myers-Briggs, which you probably all have taken, they categorize you, they put you together, and I would end up with the calmer, cooler, the creative, the more low-key type. And then the extroverts, they were high-fiving and having fun and yakking it up and all that. And so, clearly we saw that there were differences among us. And the practice was very good because it was talking about how we communicate and how we receive and what's best for us. So that to me was very eye-opening. And that was in my 20s. And then the next big eye opener for me, or life-changing thing, was Susan Cain's book, which you gave me, but I already had a copy. So Susan Cain, I feel like, is the one who really opened the door and came out, kicked the door down, talking about introversion. Her book is called Quiet: The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And so she just completely broke it down, had research, had so much that resonated with me. And I was just like, oh my God, this is what it is. This is it. And so from there, I knew it then, but it wasn't until my 20s or 30s that I heard the word and knew that it applied to me. And that I wasn't just some weirdo, because I just thought I was just weird. I was just nerdy, just weird.
Do you remember a moment when that really hit you? When you realized, oh, that's what I am. That's what's going on.
I think with the Myers-Briggs, it was affirming and it was positive because I love the people that I was paired with. My group, they were, to me, the most thoughtful, the most creative, the most kind. And so I loved that, and being categorized as that along with them. So that was really mind-blowing to me, and eye-opening. And it was sort of like a quiet strength. And then as I started to hear about these other introverts, like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, so this is years later, and Michael Jordan and Oprah Winfrey, that's another thing that was very appealing to me. Like, look at them. They're at the top of their games. They're making things happen, yet they have this quiet sort of strength and this quiet presence, which helps me with understanding and recognizing that it's okay to be a little quiet. It's nothing wrong with it. But I think in our society, the most extroverted wins. I think that we are in a world where that's valued more. And so it's affirming to see other people, and like you, who told me you were an introvert. And it's great to see that introverts can do whatever they want. They can run a business, they can do whatever. And it's just the way that we use our voice a little differently. But we still can lead. We're still intelligent. We still have everything. We just may not have the stage present. And I shouldn't even say that. Well, I think we have everything extroverts have. They just do it a little differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And how have you been able to make the most of your introversion? Like, as you have learned more and more about yourself, and you've really been steeping yourself in the world of introverts for the last year and a half. I mean, you've really dove deep. How have you learned to make the most of being an introvert? Like, I don't want to be grandiose about it, but like, have you learned how to kind of tap into this as a superpower?
Well, it's funny how my curiosity leads to the questions that people seem to respond to and open up to. I mean, almost everyone compliments me on the questions that I ask. And I think that stems from introversion. And I think it stems from me listening and really trying to understand, because I think we're deep thinkers, we're analytical, we're observant, we're all of these things. And so I think that that has helped me be successful, even in marketing. It's like when you tell me I need to sell this school, I need to sell this product, I'm trying to dive deep into the mind of the kind of student that wants to go here. What is it that they want to hear? What is it that they want to see? What can I show them? And so I'm really good at writing messaging that may have some emotional pull or something that attracts them. Are really good at speech writing. Even if I haven't known you long, I can be around you a few times and write a really wonderful, beautiful, dynamic speech. Now, don't ask me to get on stage and be your speaker, but I can write the speech for you. And so I think I'm attributing all of those things to my introversion. Also, the reading. I could not get my head out of a book when I was a kid. And so many of my mom's friends and people will just still say to me to this day, "What are you reading? I know you're reading." And I think that also helped shape, I think my adventure in my head and how I dive into the world of that I'm reading. Or, I love movies. I hate that I can't go to the movie theater. I love to be fully immersed and go and sit in a theater with a tub full of popcorn and really be all into it in the dark. And I love it. And I feel like all of that is contributing to me being able to be the marketing communications person I am and be the podcaster to have this brand that I am. And I just think it stems back to the way my mind works as an introvert.
Yeah, I was on your podcast, and you asked great questions and are such a deep listener that I forgot I was on a podcast. I thought I was just having a conversation. It was really great, and it was one of my favorite podcasts. And so that's a good segue, actually, because tell us about, and look what I'm wearing.
Yay. I'm wearing an introvert t-shirt too. Mine says introvert. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Hush Loudly. And so tell us about Hush Loudly.
So Hush Loudly started because a friend of mine works at WGN Radio. And like most people, when you start school, I've been in school for about 4 years. They ask, "Well, what's your topic going to be? What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to do something on introversion." And he says, "What about it?" And so I say, "Well, I think that people will be surprised that introverts can lead, because I think there's a stigma. And I think that people perceive introversion to be something else, and that we're all hermits and antisocial, and we stay in the house and we hate people and we don't know how to talk." And so he said, "Yeah." So then I start talking. And then he says, "Jeri, I think that should be a podcast." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "People would want to hear that." And so he helped me put this together and passed it by the folks at WGN, who I'm grateful for. And so at the time, they were looking to build their podcast network. So I lucked up, which I feel like everything is happening in divine order. I think it was meant to be, and I just have to be grateful for it. And so on the podcast, what I do is try to talk to different people to share their stories, because my goal is always the same: to educate and to empower. So I want to just educate for those of us who are introverts or don't know we are introverts. You know, I love it when I get a call or an email about how much this resonated with them. And now they have a better understanding of who they are and what they can do. And then I also want to empower those younger introverts. Like I think about myself, I want to tell them, you're not weird, you're fine, you're okay. You have some superpowers, you have some amazing characteristics and attributes. You just have to figure out how to use them to get what you want. So the podcast is allowing that for me, as so many of us have. Everybody's story is amazing, and what they share, their challenges, their successes, their wins, and how they manage or how they relate to someone has been a learning for me, as well as others who are listening. And it seems to be even for the guests. The guests are seeming to get a lot out of it as well. So I'm really enjoying it. I love doing it.
Well, you know, that's what I was saying about your ability to ask great questions, that part of you that is curious. It's, I think that's also one of the qualities of, and there are several people here with us tonight who are very talented coaches. I think that's one of the most important qualities of a great coach, is asking the right questions. I mean, that some would say that's the whole thing, right? Dan and Jennifer. And so when you ask those questions, when people are saying they're getting a lot out of it, it's almost like they're in a coaching session with you, because they're probably learning things that they didn't realize, because you're asking questions that are kind of going deeper.
Yeah.
And so that leads me to another question. And we have a couple of questions out in the group here. Let me just ask this question, and then we'll turn to those questions. What have you been learning about introversion as you've really immersed yourself in this world, and you've been having conversations, and just are there things that you didn't realize before about introversion that what's bubbled to the surface for you?
Well, I think, and I'm looking at someone's question, Dan, or I don't know if this is from Fabian, about the question about introversion and gender. What's bubbling up is the intersectionality of your introversion and something else. And so the more I talk about it, it's coming out. And so what I've been talking about this week, because I've come up with this Black Introvert Week, is the intersectionality of being an introvert, being an African-American person, also being female. And I have a friend who you'll be on the panel with on Saturday, who talks about it as a Black gay male. And so there are all of these things that come with it, because when I talk about being African-American, the way it bubbles up is that when I start in a new position, what you see first is a Black girl. You see that. And so you don't know my personality. You don't know anything about me. You've seen my resume. So you know, okay, she's had some great jobs. She has some education, but you just see a Black girl. And so with that, you pull in all of your perceptions, your preconceived notions, stereotypes, good or bad, of what you think a Black girl should be. And so when I come in and I am a soft-spoken, quieter type person, and I've been told I'm hard to read, you don't know what to make of me. And so it makes me work a little harder to prove that I belong there. It's partially my fault, but I'm okay with it because I'm not open. So there are some people who day one will tell you their whole life story. How many, yes, I did this, I did that, and everything. That's never me. And there are some people, when you walk in their office, you can create your own story, because they have the pictures there to show you. And you can see they have 3 kids and a husband, and they have 3 dogs and this, that, and the other. I don't do that. That's not me. And so when the majority, because usually I'm the minority. So usually when I'm in a leadership position in a nonprofit or in higher ed, Like you mentioned, I was vice president. I was the only person of color at the executive level. And so when they're trying to get to know me, it's hard. And it's not that I'm not friendly, because I am, but I'm just not living my life out loud. And so I have just found over the years that I just have to do extra. It's like I have to just prove myself for them to get a little more comfortable with me. And usually it only takes me 30 to 60 days. I kind of have it all figured out. Usually I have to just start with a big win, because where the problem lies is they start to wonder, did we make the right hire? Is she smart? Can she lead? Do we need to put her on this project? Does she have interpersonal skills? How's she going to manage her team if she's not really that talkative? I'm a great manager. I'm an awesome manager. But you don't know that. And so what I have to usually do, which usually in marketing is pretty easy, I'll do something to get us on the news. I'll do something to get us in the newspaper, and I'll do something, and usually just based on my contacts, which is another thing that I think introverts have in terms of the way we network. I don't network and go to a conference and get 200 people's business cards. I will meet two people, but I will continue that relationship. I will follow up. We will have a conversation at the conference that is meaningful, and they remember me and I remember them. And those contacts are people that I can reach out to later when I'm trying to get media or I'm trying to do something. And it's because it's genuine, it's authentic. I don't just meet people to meet people. But back to what I was saying, I just try to come with a big win soon, and then people can relax. And then they're like, okay, she's quiet, but she's okay. She got us on NBC. And so I have talked to other nationalities, and they say it's not the same. So it's like, I think if I was a white girl, it might be like, oh, she's just nerdy, but it's fine. But I think that because of just how we have our own perceptions and our own thinking. And so I think that it's a problem. And same thing with my friend, the gay guy who is gay and African American, and he's 6'3", and he talks about has walking in as a Black man and all of the preconceived notions and stereotypes that come along with that. And then he's gay, which, that's nobody's business. So he doesn't come out talking about it. He doesn't hide it, but it's not something that you just share day one at a job, because it's really no one's business. And so he said he has to make sure that he's friendly, but not too friendly, because that makes people uncomfortable. And then if he's not friendly enough, it makes people uncomfortable because they think, is this the angry Black man? So that's how I think that things come into play. In terms of gender, I think it's something there too. I think if I were a man and had this same persona, it might go over a little easier. I don't know, because I think the man would be seen as, well, he's worth it. He's valuable. It's on his resume. It is what it is. I think, no offense to men, but I feel like women, we have to prove ourselves a little more. That's my experience. And so I think that there is something with that as well.
And Jeri, the intersection of introversion and an additional difference has kind of, in a way, it's kind of taken a life of its own for you, because I know you've led some panel conversations about introversion and people of color, right?
Yes. So I had one on Tuesday night, and I had another one last year. And Darius, the guy that I'm talking about, he's one of those people. And he's an executive director of a foundation at a university. And so when I started talking about this in one podcast with my friend Lisa, other people start, because it's something we just thought it was just us, because she's been told, and she's worked at DePaul, University of Chicago. She also has had leadership positions in higher ed. And she's actually been told, well, we don't know if you're engaged. Well, we don't know if you're a team player. And it's because she doesn't want to go and hang out and have beer later. She doesn't want to. It's not that she doesn't like the university, it's just same thing with me. I don't want to hang out with everybody. Now, I'll hang out with Andrew, but I'm not hanging out with everybody else. I don't want to. And that shouldn't be held against me, but that is part of office politics. And so we're finding that you have to play the game. You have to, and that's my reason for even talking about this. I'm not asking for any special treatment, any special accommodations. It's really for the people who are experiencing this to push them to figure out your way. You have to. Just like with me, I'm the master of a one-on-one. And if I'm in a conference or in a room with 50 people talking and everyone is talking, I'm going to be quietly listening, observing, taking notes, watching body language, absorbing it all. Yes, I think there is empathy. I'm always very inclusive in my thinking, making sure that we have touched every audience, making sure that we don't offend a certain audience when we're doing something with messaging or whatever. And so I may not say one word in the meeting. After that meeting, you can best believe I have some notes and I'm going to discuss my assessment in a one-on-one or in an email, and I'm going to most likely have some justification, some data. That's that analytical brain. And I'm going to talk about why we should go A and not B versus my colleagues, the extroverts. They, like you said, they think while doing, and I envy that. I love it. They think on the spot. I can't. I need time to process. I need a minute. And so I've learned to just master the one-on-one and to have a private conversation with the decision maker, with my boss. So my goal is to tell these introverts, and whatever intersectionality there is, you have to figure out a way that's comfortable for you to get your voice heard so that you can get promoted and you can get bonuses and you can move ahead.
Yeah, I love that. And while you were describing that, Kylie asked a great question, but I want to, there's one that we had earlier from Dan. Dan, would you mind opening your mic and asking your question? I want to.
Well, sure. And I sorry, I don't recall the exact moment.
It was the relationship between empathy and introversion. Do you see any relationship there, Jeri?
Yes. So I actually have been told that I'm an empath, but other than that, there are almost everyone that I have a close relationship who is an introvert. We all have that feeling. We all feel what it's like, or believe that we know what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. And we include that in our decision making. And so I think that's something beautiful as you're making a decision and you want to make sure, okay, we cannot offend. If we say this, it is offensive. If we do this, it is offensive. We're not being inclusive. We're not thinking this. So I have not done any research on that. When I talked to Susan Cain, she talked about that. So, and I feel like she's the expert. So I don't know. You're going to make me now go and look to see if there are any articles on that. But I know that there is a correlation. I believe, my personal opinion from the introverts, I know that there is a correlation between empathy and introversion.
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me, being married to a very empathic introvert.
Okay. Yeah.
And Kylie, I'm not seeing her now, but she had a great question. Would you like to ask that, dear friend?
Actually, Patrick phrased the first one, but it's kind of a two-part question. You were talking about how in the workplace, a lot of times people will ask, oh, well, are you even engaged? What is a way that we can kind of like update our criteria for telling if people are engaged, or include introverted people in the conversation without like putting them on the spot or doing something that like is against their personality?
Well, I think one thing is, just like I said, I need time to process. And I think that that's very common. So any advance notice. So if there's a meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock, if you could let us know through an agenda what you're looking for, what's the topic. So that'll start noodling. I'll start noodling that around in my head. Like, okay, so we're going to talk about this. So Kylie's going to want some ideas on that. That's one thing. Another thing is when you're in an office setting or on Zoom with a bunch of people, there are some people who love to talk. And so for those, I'm not going to compete with them. I don't want to, I don't need to. But I don't necessarily want you to call on me if I'm not prepared. So I think one way around that is, I know this sounds like school, but do something in the beginning like, okay, I'm going to take 5 minutes. Everybody just email or put in the chat their ideas or something like that. And that might even generate more conversation and brainstorming as people see everyone's ideas. And then if still that introvert isn't saying anything, I would give the opportunity later. Okay, the meeting's over. I know that some of you are still probably stewing on this. Please send me an email with your thoughts and ideas. I think there's some things like that. And that would make that introvert feel more comfortable and seen. And they would think, oh my God, Kylie sees me. She's given me an opportunity to share my thoughts and share them in the way that I want to share them. So I think that. And the first part of your question, I'm sorry, and I don't remember.
No, that's okay. I think that really captured it. It was really two different phrasings of the same kind of thing, but thank you for that.
Well, I do think there was a distinction there, Kylie. And what I love about you asking that question is that you said you're extroverted. And Pat, you are also?
I've been told from time to time.
I think that's what we took the tests and it seems to be that way. But like you were saying at the beginning, I think there's a spectrum and sometimes some certain situations it doesn't feel that way. And at, phases of your life, it doesn't feel that way. So.
Yeah. So what I loved about you asking that question about how do we, as extroverts, how do we, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was kind of like, how do we support people who are introverted? And I love it because I think, and this is totally my opinion, absolutely no research behind this. So I'll be curious to see if any of the rest of you feel the same way, but I feel like it's always the introverts who have to accommodate the extroverts.
Yes.
And what I would love to see, and maybe this is part of your ministry, Jeri, the introvert ministry, is helping extroverts learn how to work and to get the best from introverts. I think I said in my interview with you that organizations need to realize the number of people that are introverted, because if you're not setting them up to offer their best thinking, based on the research, you're missing a third to a half of the brain power of your organization if you're not making that space for them. That's huge.
I think that's a good point, and that applies to not just introverts and extroverts, but people who belong to all different kinds of groups. It doesn't, you're excluding a lot of people when you decide that the default is one way. The default is extroverts, and we're going to cater all of our business and our behavior to fit those people. Well, you're excluding everybody who belongs to the other groups. And in this particular scenario, it just happens to be because extroverts are just inherently the ones who take up audible space in the room, and extroverts tend to talk more and talk louder. So they just got lucky on that one. But in a lot of other circumstances, it feels like there are people who belong to minority groups who get talked over just because they decided that a different group was the default and we're going to make all of our practices fit that group. And then if you don't really fit that, too bad.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely bend and flex, and I feel like we have to be chameleons because we live in a society that rewards and values extroverts. And I'm not complaining about it. It is what it is. I think we just have to figure out how to fit in. And we love when we have managers that are open and understand that all of us think differently. and we all have different needs and we communicate differently. It's okay. And I even remember when Andrew, when you first came and worked with us, there was a time when you asked everyone to just write down, spend the 10 minutes writing whatever and turn it in. We introverts love that because we sometimes I don't want to be the center of attention and don't need to be. And so I'm more comfortable if I can just provide my brain power in the way that I can, but I love it if you use it. We want to be used. We have a lot to offer and we have a lot to add. And another thing, Kylie, is with like the office environment and the office space. Those open environments pre-COVID, the open office space, I hate that. I think, because, and it's not about my needing my own space because I'm selfish. It's not that. It's that I can hear everything. And so even if I'm just in my office, I hear you on your phone. I hear somebody else's music. I hear somebody else talking, chatting. I hear the water thing, and I may be an extra sensitive introvert. I don't know. But all of that stimulation and activity does not help me produce. And so if I am in a cubicle, that helps because it's a little something absorbing the sound. If I'm in an office, even better. But I would love for employers to do things like that when after COVID or when we're back in offices, that we all think differently and need different things to produce the best, because the stimulation is another thing with introverts. And what I've read in my research is about our nervous system. It's a neurological thing, and that we are more sensitive to stimulation, so we need less of it. And so all the lights and all of the activity and the noise and this and that, we hear and feel all of it. Whereas extroverts are less sensitive to it. It doesn't bother them. Like I have a girlfriend and she'll be over here, the music, the TV's up, and she will just talk over the TV. And I'm turning it down. Like, okay, let's turn this down. Let's be quiet. We're just different. And so those are the kinds of things that I think would be helpful too to introverts in the workplace in terms of getting the most out of them, getting to them to produce in the way that you need them to produce.
Thank you. That's really insightful.
And
Jeri, are you seeing a difference with COVID? Like my boss is an introvert, our HR director, and she's struggling with the Zoom. And being constantly on, like with being in a virtual environment, people are always pinging you, and like it's a lot more pinging and a lot more interrupting. Like you wouldn't just walk in the HR director's office and just plop down and start having a conversation, but you'll ping her on the IM or the email, and she says it's real, and she links it to her introversion too, about having the struggle. So are you seeing that with COVID? It's worse for introverts?
Absolutely. Well, one thing, when we first got the shelter in place orders, the introverts loved it. We were chilling like, oh my God, I'm at home. I can have on my pajama bottoms and do all of this. And so I think, and just like my extrovert friends were going crazy. My one friend who's in my bubble, she was over here every week because she had to get out and needed to be somewhere around someone other than her husband or her kids. And so we're just different. But what I'm finding now is just what you said. Everybody that I'm talking to is like, oh my God, if I have to do another damn Zoom, I'm so tired of this. And then it's so much. So it's not even just, we're paying attention to the Zoom, but now you also have to manage the chat. And then your dog is barking. And then the phone, you got to look at your phone number because it's a text, because it's your mom, and it's too much. And so all day Zoom is exhausting. And it's because we still have to turn it on. It's like we're more on stage on Zoom versus, like you said, in the office where you could get a break to recharge. You could close your door. You could go downstairs and get a snack. And that gave you a few minutes to recharge and regroup after your energy is expended in something else. But one Zoom after the other, and you just have a minute to go to the bathroom or a minute to get some coffee, it is exhausting. I think it is hard on introverts.
and John, you
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Fabienne?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, to me, it boils down to the fact that we shouldn't put labels. introvert and because I loved what you said, Andrew, about this being really a spectrum. I can be very introverted. I'm an extrovert naturally, but I can be very introverted. I think that labels.
Oh, we're losing her.
You're
Perfect. Oh, I didn't know.
you're freezing up, Fabienne.
Sides and the
No, I don't think she's hearing us.
Yeah, well, I can add that, and in my research, there's all this talk about, like you said, it's not binary. No one is completely introverted or completely extroverted. We are all on the spectrum. Just like when I started talking about being an introvert, so many people said to me, "You're not an introvert, you're in marketing. What are you talking about?"
Right.
And so, but it's like I turn it on for my job, but my preference is to recharge in solitude and to regain my energy in my head and in solitude versus some of my other friends, they recharge in another way. So I understand what you're saying about the labels. Yeah, we are all on the spectrum.
John, you had a question, I believe.
Yeah, Jerry, it was interesting. I joined a little early and there are only 4 or 5 in the room. And the first thing you said was, "You're nervous." And my immediate reaction was to make a joke and try to make you feel comfortable.
And that helped.
So, and I appreciate that. And I just wonder if that was a self-defense mechanism or what that you developed, or you were just being honest, or did you plan on letting the group know that this is not where you feel the strongest? And I wanted to kind of give you that energy and that power, because that's what I do. I'm a performer, and I know how to read someone's body language immediately upon meeting them, and I try to make them feel comfortable. But you did something really important, I think, is be honest with the group and feed off of our energy to give you that extra confidence boost to do what you're doing.
Yes, and thank you for making me laugh in the very beginning. Yes, I was honest. I was nervous. I told Andrew earlier today I was nervous. When I speak to a group of people, I'm nervous, and I feel like the words won't come. I feel like, just like I said, I'm processing. Sometimes if you ask me a question, the answer is not always there. And so I have to think a minute. And so I'm nervous that when I'm on stage, and this to me is like being on stage, even though this is family and friends, and I'm concerned, like, what if the words don't come? And what if I sound like an idiot? So no, I truly am nervous, but Zoom, this makes it easier. I think that on stage, if I was in front of 200 people, I could do it, but I'd be more nervous. Something about being in the comfort of my home, and I don't know, it's not probably as nerve-wracking to me as it would be if I were in front of 200 people. But yes, I was nervous. I'm not nervous now, but I was at first.
Well, that's great. And I think that that's a great tool that introverts can use, is just be honest how they're feeling and get that added support, because we're all here, we're all supportive people. We don't have an agenda. We wanted to hear what you had to say, and anything that we as extroverts can do to empower you, we're naturally going to do that. And so I think it's a really important thing for introverts to understand that you can feed off our energy and get through those first 2 or 3 minutes of butterflies. And because you got going, you kicked its ass, So I think that that's a really important tool to add your bag of tricks.
Thank you for that. And you are making me think about one of my closest friends who is an extrovert. She's out there, she's amazing, and she is my biggest advocate. because I'm thinking about when we were at an event, and it was a girls, we all went to Santa Barbara, and there were like 10 of us, and we all met one night in our pajamas in a suite, and we were having these conversations, and somebody said to me, Jeri, you're always so quiet. Are you shy? And so I started to say, no, I'm not shy. And then she was the first person. She was like, no, she talks when she's ready to talk. She's fine. Leave her alone, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, actually, she's an introvert. And so she's just observing and blah, blah, blah. And it started into this whole conversation about it. So my point is, my biggest advocates are extroverts. And it's funny how I usually always work for an extrovert, and the guys that I date tend to be extroverts. So we need each other. I love the balance because we need each other.
And you made a really important distinction just now, that introvert does not necessarily mean shy. You know, a lot of people will assume that you're shy, and not because of your pondering a question and really being prepared to say something, and not being able to interject in the middle of a conversation. And we extroverts, I guess, can make that assumption that, oh, she's just shy. When that's a really interesting distinction that I think people need to understand, that just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you're a shy person. You're just pensive.
Well,
Hey,
dear
Andrew,
friends.
can I make a comment
Yes, please.
quickly? I know we're over. So here's my recommendation to extroverts. Based on our predisposition, all of us, to make a judgment about somebody almost instantaneously, I think with extrovert, that's harder to stop, to resist that predisposition. They make that decision and then they roll with it because they're moving. As opposed to an introvert who is inclined to pause for a moment. So the extroverts could recognize the predisposition to make an instant decision about somebody and say, nope, I'm going to pause. I'm going to give that person some time before I make any decisions about them. That would be great help for introverts.
Yes. Don't judge a book by its cover, which is what people used to say. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, Jeri, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for a great conversation. I hope you'll all visit HushLoudly, and her podcasts are recorded. You interviewed Valerie Jarrett, who was President Obama's not chief of staff, but she was senior advisor. She interviewed Susan Cain, who, is kind of like the current subject matter expert on introversion. She interviewed me, and I mean, we all know what a big deal I am.
Yeah,
just slow down the camera. We don't want to see what's below the camera line there.
So check out HushLoudly. This Saturday, Jeri is going to be facilitating a panel about loving an introvert. And where can we find more information about that session, Jeri?
So there's a Zoom link, which I could share later, but if you go to my website, HushLoudly.com, if you scroll down, you'll see the panel, which is called How to Love an Introvert, 13 Tips. And I think this is going to be fun because this is another thing that I've run into where guys will tell me they didn't think I liked them. They didn't think, well, I was into them. And as I started talking more to people about it, I feel like it's an introvert thing. And we may need a little more space sometimes. And if we go to a wedding reception, which, it's not my most fun thing. I love going to a wedding, The reception, not so much, but I go because I have to go. And, you know, if I disappear for a little while, it's okay. It's not that I don't like you or don't want to be with you. It's just that I just need a break from all the activity and all the stimulation. And so as I had talked to my friends about it, we just have interesting observations as single people, as married people, gay, straight, and we just are going to just talk about it. And hopefully for those who are interested in learning more about how to date or like or love an introvert, they would tune in. And also for the introverts, just giving us some tips on what you should say to make your partner feel comfortable, and let them know that it's not them, it's not rejection, it's just what I need to do for me. So I'm excited about this panel, and Andrew is one of my guests. And it's this Saturday at noon, Chicago, 1 o'clock Eastern time.
Because if there's one thing I know a lot about, it's love. I can't wait, Jeri. Just before we go, I want to say that our next gathering is March 11th, and the special guest is someone that I am working on, and I'm very excited about, and I am very hopeful. And so I can't commit to that person at this moment, but I think it's going to work out great, and I'll let you all know just as soon as I can. Please visit happyhourhope.com and share some of your fortune with the Imani Pearls Foundation. And thank you all for being here.